'Tis indeed a miracle, one must feel, that two such heavenly creatures are real. Pauline had been emotionally scarred by her friend's abrupt departure from school, and she ate little and began to lose weight rapidly. But the writing sustained her, and the pair planned to turn their obsession into careers. They drafted a plan for their future, which was to take their novels, growing increasingly more violent over time, to America in search of a publisher and eventual Hollywood connection. By March of 1954, with their plan quickly becoming their top priority, the girls set out to gather traveling money through various schemes with differing levels of success. They tried wild tactics like attempting robbery, and their diaries revealed they'd even planned to resort to prostitution, convinced that experiencing the adrenaline rush of criminality would have a positive impact on their writing. One individual they continually tried to extort was Major Walter Bill Perry, who had been staying at Ilam Homestead since the previous summer as a tenant. Hilda Hulme was clearly in some type of relationship with Bill Perry, likely prompting the girls to try and take advantage of him financially. And then, once again, Juliet and Pauline's plans of being together were thwarted by the Hulmes' travel plans, but this time it would be father and daughter going abroad. Mr. Hulme had left his position at the university and planned to drop his still ailing daughter at his sister's home in Johannesburg, South Africa, to continue her recuperation in warm weather. Her father would travel on to England to secure employment, and Juliet's mother and brother were to join at his school break, though she was now romantically involved with the tenant Bill Perry, and the Hulmes planned to divorce. Of course, Pauline wanted to move with her friend, however, none of the parents would consent, with her own mother protesting the loudest. She wrote in her diary around then, wondering why her parents couldn't just die, like random people did every day. The target of Pauline's fury became solely her mother, Honorah, not only because she so vocally opposed the friendship, but also because she stayed on Pauline about her weight. She would threaten to keep her from seeing Juliet unless she put on some pounds, leveraging the only thing Pauline felt she had control over against her. By late April 1954, her diary began to mirror the escalation of her violent thoughts, calling her mother Honorah, quote, an obstacle. Quickly, her diary began to read outright that her mother should die by her hand from what would appear to be natural causes or an accident. She also noted that she'd yet to share her plans with Juliet. When Juliet was informed of the plan, she was ill at ease with the thought, but preparing for the deed offered them solace from the knowledge they would be separated for good. Their time together was growing shorter by the day. This episode is brought to you by Best Fiends. Life's been so stressful, I really need daily fun, and I can get it with Best Fiends, the free-to-download, incomparable Match 3 puzzle game with literally thousands of levels and new ones added all the time. It's an obsession I never have to feel guilty about. It's boredom's worst nightmare. Best Fiends is an endless source of fun I can get to anytime. No internet or Wi-Fi required. After all this time, I still love popping in daily to claim my bonus and send gifts to friends before smashing a few levels to start the day. With Best Fiends, there's always something new every day, so you'll never get tired of seeing the same old stuff. It's never too late to try out Best Fiends, and 100 million downloads can't be wrong. Get ready to be obsessed, but hey, just don't blame me. Download Best Fiends free today on the Apple App Store or Google Play. That's friends without the R. Best Fiends. Pauline's diary reflected the plan coming together, and on the morning of June 22nd, 1954, she titled what was to be her final passage, The Day of the Happy Event, writing, quote, I'm writing a little up on the morning before the death. I felt very excited, and the night before Christmas-ish last night. I did not have pleasant dreams, though. I'm about to rise." Honorah had planned on an outing with her daughter for that afternoon, as Pauline had also left Christchurch Girls' High School and was to be starting a proper job the following week. She convinced her mother to allow for Juliet to join them, and on her way out the door to tag along, the girl had grabbed a broken brick, placing it into a stocking once at Pauline's. They had lunch with the Reapers, then Juliet, Pauline, and Honorah took the bus to Victoria Park, enjoying some snacks before venturing past a stone wall and onto a walking trail. Near a footbridge, Juliet placed a pink gem she'd brought along, using it as a prop with which to draw Honorah's attention on their way back up. Pauline pointed the gem out to her mother, and when the woman bent down to reach for it, she was struck repeatedly in the head with the half-brick in the stocking, until she was dead. The girls raced back up to the snack stand, hysterically declaring that Pauline's mother had had an accident. She'd fallen and was badly injured, they said, after striking her head on a rock. But in truth, once Pauline had begun to hit her mother in the head with the brick, she was unable to stop and initially stuck to her claim that her mother had simply fallen, not aware, it seemed, that police had recovered the bloody brick and stocking from near Honorah's body. She did not place Juliet at the scene. Detectives agreed, but when they told Juliet that they were pretty sure she hadn't witnessed Honorah's death, she grew confused. After consulting privately with her mother's boyfriend, Bill Perry, Juliet gave a second, more official statement. She told them that, like police had thought, she had gone a bit ahead, and when she turned back, her friend's mother was lying dead, with Pauline saying she'd fallen. When police relayed this story to Pauline, she confessed to killing her mother and declared that she had gotten the brick from her own home. 16-year-old Pauline Yvonne Parker was arrested and charged with her mother's murder. And that could have been enough to absolve Juliet of the accusation of accomplice to murder, had the diaries been disposed of prior to the killing. Hilda Hulme had hidden Juliet's as soon as she'd returned to the house. However, when police searched the boarding house, they immediately found Pauline's incriminating journals. Juliet spent a harrowing emotional night with her mother by her side. The following day, detectives turned up to confront her about her actual involvement and what she'd really seen. They'd read Pauline's diaries and seen their other 14 volumes of writings. While Juliet waited on her mother to return home, the teen offered up another version of events, while in the presence of Bill Perry, saying that their initial intention had been to scare the woman into allowing Pauline to move to South Africa with her friend. Some parts of her earlier statement were true. She had gone ahead, but when she heard yelling behind her, she turned and saw that the attack was in progress. Juliet next freely admitted to taking part in the assault, saying that she rushed over and helped Pauline restrain and beat 45-year-old Honorah Parker to death. She admitted to swinging that brick, explaining that she'd only been trying to protect her friend and that she feared Pauline would kill herself if her mother did not die. The statement was signed, and 15-year-old Juliet Marion Hulme was arrested and charged with the murder of her best friend's mother. In neither instance was there an attorney present. Their next hearing was scheduled for a few weeks later, on July 14, 1954, and they were sent to prison to wait. Juliet's father departed Christchurch as scheduled on July 3, 1954, and took with him to England her brother Jonathan after receiving a position at Cambridge University to teach math. Everyone vacated Ilam Homestead, and Bill Perry literally and figuratively took Henry Hulme's place in the family. Attorneys for the girls were perplexed, considering the signed statements and diaries that police already had in their possession, in addition to the matching stocking found in Pauline's room. They were examined several times by doctors as they tried to mount an insanity defense, and the girls were split up after the first hearing so that their behavior could be evaluated separately. The trial was set for the following month. It became evident that the girls were trying to appear insane, with Juliet even telling one doctor that insanity would see them released earliest. The defense teams banded together for the duration of the proceedings, and the expert they hired found the girls to exhibit extreme narcissism, likely due to being sickly and spoiled children, and determined that they suffered the effects of repressed homosexuality, which Juliet has always denied. The attorneys presented an insanity defense with a twist, arguing that folie à deux, or shared psychosis, was at play in the murder. The medical diagnosis from the expert gave the defense a foundation for their claim, which, when trial began on August 23, 1954, had yet to be successfully utilized in a New Zealand court. Media coverage was worldwide, due mostly to the girls' young ages and the savagery of Honorah Parker's murder. In the end, the week-long trial ended with verdicts of guilty of murder for both girls, and they were the first youths to be spared the death penalty after legislation changed to exclude minors, a feat the United States would not achieve for another 50 years. They were jailed on Her Majesty's pleasure and were considered adult lifers. 15-year-old Juliet Hulme was sent to Mount Eden Prison, archaic and saved for New Zealand's most disdainful offenders. Her father had left New Zealand after her arrest, and her mother left the country with Bill Perry 2 weeks after the girl's trial ended. From then until her death in 2004, Hilda Hulme would be known as Marion Perry, having married Bill and taken her middle name as her first. Juliet endured the first 3 months of her imprisonment in solitary confinement, and once released to an 8-foot by 6-foot prison cell, lived the next 4 years without heat, air conditioning, a proper toilet, or running water. Her early days were spent at hard labor, scrubbing floors or laundry by hand until the respiratory ailments that plagued her since childhood returned and she was allowed lighter duties like sewing. Mostly, she was dirty, unhealthy, and lonely, as even interactions with other prisoners were minimalized, but she was allowed to knit and read freely, 2 activities she enjoyed doing at the same time. With less than 2 years left in her sentence, she was transferred to Errahata Borstal Prison, where her former friend Pauline had been enjoying a much more pleasant prison experience. Pauline was returned to Christchurch and transferred back to prison there, where her father was able to visit her. Both Pauline and Juliet were released from their respective prisons in November of 1959, after just over 5 years in custody, liberated within 2 weeks of each other to try and ensure their paths did not cross. Juliet was ordered to use her mother's maiden name of Stewart as a surname and selected the first name of Anne, though she'd yearned for something more exciting. Juliet Hulme had ceased to have a normal life since her tuberculosis diagnosis made her abandon school, and 7 years later she re-entered society as 21-year-old Anne Stewart. After spending a few years with her mother and stepfather, she took on her final incarnation and became Anne Perry. Throughout the early 1960s, Anne worked various jobs, shadowed by her fear that her anonymity would somehow be shattered at any moment. Publicity did not cease throughout their incarcerations, and articles, chapters in crime anthology books, and television programs and reports continued to be dedicated to New Zealand's famous Parker-Hulme murder case and the girls' perceived codependent lesbian relationship, with no new insights or theories being shared. Anne Perry petitioned the government for an immigration visa, and one was ultimately granted, and the young woman was